Are you eating too little to lose weight? Are you eating too little to gain lean muscle and see the tone and the definition that you want? And are you eating too little to feel like you have energy? I'm going to answer all those questions, and you're in for a treat. This is Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns. Definitely doing that here today. And I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And shameful, not shameful, plug right here. Right now, while I'm releasing this, and this is going to be an eternally evergreen podcast you're going to want to listen to no matter what time it is, but it happens to be the Black Friday event. And there has never been a better time to join the Flipping 50 Cafe than right now, where you can get a huge savings off the already best advantage of the annual membership and get two big bonuses. And I'll put the details in the show notes, and that'll be at flipping50.com/eating too little. And there will be handout, a cheat sheet associated with this podcast as well. So if you want to use that to join and do the calculations with me, you may want to go and grab that right now. So listen up. That is flipping50.com/eat enough. Eat enough, no space between it. flipping50.com/eat enough. Okay, that's your worksheet. You don't have to opt in, no email address. Just go grab it because I really want you to have it. Let's unpack all this. Okay, so first of all, that's a shocker, isn't it? Are you eating too little to lose weight? Well, how would you know? We're going to answer that question. What it's called is LEA, low energy availability. And if you're at risk or you're in a low energy availability state, you'll risk thyroid function disruption, endocrine disruption, that's AKA your hormones, muscle loss, workout performance, and therefore your results will suffer, and negative mitochondria, which is your energy production central, basically, and muscle protein synthesis effects. So negative effects on your muscle protein synthesis means your body isn't using the protein that you eat in the way that it should. And muscle, you can't gain it, can't maintain it. That means no tone, right? Okay. Low energy availability. What causes it? Well, number one, dieting, right? Thinking that if I eat less and exercise more, the dogma that makes me nauseous to even say it, but it just rolls off your tongue because people have been saying it for decades. Low energy availability causes are this. From dieting, of course, too low overall calories, too low of protein, too low carbohydrates, too low fat, or any combination of those. Any single one of them or any combination of them. And generally, you are going to have a combination of them. The culprits, intentional dieting. You're doing it on purpose. Fasting. Yep, I waited. Did you hear it? The pregnant pause, right? So fasting, I know you think it's a quick fix. I know you think it's going to help you lose weight. I know it helps your longevity. However, if you're shooting yourself in your foot now, making yourself fatter, losing muscle, how is that going to bode well for your longevity? We somehow have to find the sweet spot between the two. Keto, which is low carb, or lifestyle dietary choices. Now, I'm in a no judgment zone here, and so are you, but I do have to say that inadequate essential amino acids from your plant based sources of protein, meaning leucine, one of the essential amino acids that you have to eat on a regular basis. Leucine is high in animal sources of protein, but low in plant-based sources, all of them. So you have to very consciously not just say, okay, well, I'm going to have a plant-based protein powder today, but you better be adding maybe some nut butter or some flax seeds to that to bump up the leucine that you need per serving, which is about 2.5, and really 3 really is better. So let's talk protein needs. All right. So I'm going to give you some numbers here, and this is why you're going to want that worksheet, not just to do the math, but also so that you can take some notes. So to maintain your current body weight, let's say you like where you're at, you want to stay there. And I wish that you would, if you're listening, take stock right now. So sometimes women are constantly bombarded with the fact that they're not enough. They're not thin enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not cut enough. They're not defined enough. They're not tan enough. They're not something. And it may just be if you look in the mirror, you like the way your clothes are fitting, your energy is good, that you're good right where you are. You may, yes, just need to maintain. Think about that. Okay, but here's what I want you to do. All right, and that is this. To maintain, you want your ideal body weight, whatever that is, in pounds, that should equal your grams of protein. All right, so if I wanted to weigh 125, then I would need 125 grams of protein because I'm at my ideal body weight, and that should do it, right? Now, if I wanted to lose weight, I'm actually at 130 and I want to be at 125. I need to get there. So my ideal body weight is 125, but I'm not there. And I need to multiply that by 10 or 15% more, 10 or 15% of that ideal grams. Now that's what I need for weight loss, because it will take significantly more protein to hold on to lean muscle while I'm losing weight in a caloric deficit than it does if I'm maintaining. Now, regardless of your overall need, it needs to be consumed in a specific dose. You can't just say, I'm going to skip breakfast because I'm fasting. And yes, I'm picking on somebody a little bit, I'm sure, and then just have one meal at 11 and one meal at 4 and say, or one meal at 6 even, and say I'm going to get all my calories in at each of those and get all the protein I need at 2 of those meals, because your body can't absorb it all. So 30 grams of protein minimum per meal, but no more than, say, 50 to 60. When you get to 50 grams of protein, you're going to have a hard time eating all of that at one sitting and eating anything else because it's very filling. But it's the best for protein synthesis. Your body can't simulate more. So you can't sit there and have 90 grams of protein at a sitting and have your body process that. So you're actually not getting it all. Okay, there's homework there. So use that worksheet. Carbohydrate needs. Let's talk about that. So this is where we often go wrong. So carbohydrates have gotten a bad rap. I mean, we all love them, right? We all love bread. You bring that bread basket, or you bring those tortilla chips, right, to me in the basket, and I'm going to say take those away because I don't want them sitting there. And I probably am least likely now to dive in because I know that ramifications and the way I feel the next day is like not worth it. But nobody needs that temptation, right? If it's not easy for you to pass up. But so many of us have just shunned carbohydrates because they're the evil, and yet they're not. The problem is when we combine carbohydrates with high fat. High carb, high fat, that's what we look back now and we see the obesity epidemic and where it started. That was primarily the problem. Remember? And it's, doesn't have to be saturated fat. It doesn't have to be chips, even. But you can be eating high quality carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, but still you've got a lot of them, or you've got a lot of starchy veggies, and you've got high fat, like guacamole on everything, eating nuts and seeds constantly all day. That eventually is probably going to come back to backfire on you. So On your lighter activity days, it's say a recovery day. You're not doing too much, or it's like a really short interval training day, 20 minutes of interval training. You need then about 1.4 grams of carbohydrate per pound of your body weight. So the body weight that you are or want to be, right? So what's your calculation? I would have you do that in the worksheet. And then if you're someone who likes to exercise more, that, you do at least an hour a day, or you're doing, 120 minutes. It doesn't have to be all at once. But definitely, if you're going for a 2-hour bike ride, you need to increase the carbs, 1.8 grams of carbohydrate times your body weight in pounds. So, what is your number? And I added some numbers, some samples, to the worksheet that I'll place in the podcast. But it's very important to take a good look at what are you getting right now, and what are your needs right now, and how big is that gap? Because if it's too big, you potentially are under eating for your weight loss. Crazy, right? The exact opposite, the antichrist of what you've always thought needs to be true. Let's talk about real endurance training. So really training for a huge event. That's, as I'm recording this, it is the day of the Ironman in Arizona and the Ironman in Cozumel. And I have fear of missing out because I have friends in both. And I'm keeping myself from going because I think I'll probably go and want to register. So I'm not going. But the more endurance training that you do, the increased carbohydrate need from somewhere around 2 to 2.7 grams of carbs per pound. And this is also where you're no longer going to find that you make weight loss possible when you're doing that kind of endurance training, because your body can't do conflicting goals like a high levels of exercise, maintaining your nutritional needs and your storage of glucose in the muscles, and lose weight. It's not going to happen because you're increasing your cortisol levels. So you make a compromise. If you want to do endurance training, you're going to say, the likelihood that I'm going to increase my cortisol level and not lose weight is pretty high. You're working toward performance and preventing muscle wasting. That will happen. That's your number one or number two, 1 and 2 goals. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about fat. And this will be brief, but servings per meal is an easier way to adjust and consider 5 servings a day, and it's 1 to 2 servings at each meal. And that's just read your labels, so if you're cooking or sauteing your vegetables in 1 or 2 tablespoons of oil, there's your serving. If you're putting a couple tablespoons of dressing, oil and vinegar on your salad, there's a serving. If you're serving salmon, you've got protein, and that's a high fatty meat, or a high fatty fish, that's your serving. So fat is easy really to account for. Only if you're trying to go keto, where your fat is higher and your protein is higher and your carbs are low, is that where you're going to really kind of outdo yourself there. But here's what you want to consider. Low fat and higher carbohydrate actually works for some people. And higher fat and low carb, say on your lower activity days, that works best as well. But when both your fat and your carbs are high, as I mentioned earlier, that's when we have issues. Even healthy resistant starches, this would be true for. So you want to make sure you're going up with one and down with the other and adhering to that. So even if you are fat adapted, meaning you can eat more fat and you don't need quite as much carbohydrate when you're training because you've trained your body gradually to adapt and to be able to use fat for fuel even at higher intensity levels, you still don't want to combine high fat and high carbohydrate. So you really want to be thinking about what you're doing and how you're fueling within the same window of opportunity. So let me give you an example. I do a 20-minute high intensity interval training session. Let's say that's what I'm doing. That's my exercise for the day. It's all I've got time for. And that's a light day for carbs, but still higher probably than most women. So if you're doing keto or you're consciously trying to decrease your carbs, many sources are telling you, try to get to 50 or don't go above 50. I would never recommend that an active woman who uses her brain, because you have to remember your brain needs carbohydrates to function as well. If you're an active woman who makes a lot of decisions during the day, I would never recommend going below 100 grams of carbohydrates a day. Never. And then when I have clients who are ramping up activity, they want to exercise more, then that carbohydrate number has to go up. Otherwise, we're just asking to lose lean muscle mass and increase cortisol. So based on 130 pounds, if I'm doing a low level activity, that's 182 grams of carbohydrates for my day. That is far, far more, right, than that 100-gram total. The same 20-minute session, let's say I did that before a strength training session. So it's going to be maybe, a 40-minute strength training session, but that's intense. I go to muscle fatigue. So now that boosts my need for carbohydrate, not just for protein because the strength training exercise. So I'm back to at least 1.8 grams of carbohydrate per body weight in pounds now on these days. That means 234. And this is still fairly just moderate activity level. 234 grams of carbohydrates on a daily basis. So if you're floating too low and you're finding I can't lose weight, and maybe also I don't have any energy, this is where you probably have wiggle room to test. And I promise you, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel foreign because it's the opposite of what you've ever been advised to do. But if you're not getting results doing what you're doing right now, what do you have to lose? That's my question to you. So during recovery, let's talk about timing. The timing of your recovery meals is important too. So it's not just, okay, at the end of the day, did I get this and this in? And it's not just that protein has to be dosed at breakfast and lunch and at dinner, evenly spread throughout the day for muscle protein synthesis hits to peak and valley multiple times for your benefit. But it's that you want to make sure that you're bookending your workouts. Bookending. What does that mean? Before and after with adequate fuel. So if you're fasting and you're working out intensely during that fasting window instead of in your eating window, I would change that around right away. Even if temporarily you found you've got some good results, your fat burning potential is really not higher. There's not any science to show that fat burning potential of exercising fasted is better. And the chance is that your energy output is much higher if you're eating or you're exercising in your eating window. So you will have greater energy expenditure, not just during the exercise, but then in the payback or the afterburn, we call it, from exercise. And that's crucially important because the afterburn often lasts hours longer, right? The workout may only be 45 minutes or an hour, but the afterburn can last up to 24 hours if you've had a great workout and you're bumping up that protein afterward. So super important. If you're a highly active woman, this is for you. And if you're lower to moderate and just doing what you need to do for good health and fitness, you pay a little less attention to this, okay? The ratio of protein to carbohydrates post-workout is ideally about 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. That means 1 part protein to 3 or 4 parts carbohydrate. That's if you're endurance training and you need recovery quickly so that it puts it back. So you've got it for the next workout and the next one and the next one. And if you're not that active and you're simply exercising at minimum, you're much less concerned about this. But if you're exercising intentionally 5 or 6 days a week for an hour or more, then you are an athlete. You need to qualify yourself as such. So for more active women with a threshold of 30 grams of protein at each meal, that would mean that 1-to-4, 1-to-3 ratio is somewhere between 90 and 120 grams of protein in that meal as well. So when you're, eating before breakfast, if we have a lower carbohydrate breakfast, you may want to bump that up a little bit more if you tend to do more exercise. And likewise, if you're, exercising in the morning and before your lunch, think about what you're having. I also am a big proponent of thinking what you eat at night, if you're a morning exerciser, is still fueling that morning exercise. So you may not have to eat a lot before if you exercise early in the morning, but your dinner meal is in your system. That's really going to count. So don't skimp on those sweet potatoes and make sure that you get that brown rice or that quinoa in. Don't skip it. Okay. So for a more active woman, make sure that you're getting both the protein and the carbohydrates in post exercise. So what does it look like? Just to give you some carb counts of some high quality carb choices. And I'm going to put these notes in the show notes as well. And this is by no means all inclusive, but say a cup of cooked oatmeal is 27 grams, just 27 grams of carbs. A cup of frozen blueberries, 21 grams. A medium apple is 25. Medium sweet potato, and that's 2 servings of carbs, 27 grams. A banana is 27 grams. A cup of chili, and I don't know about you, but I have a big chili bowl, so it's probably more like 1.5 to 2 cups of chili. But a cup of chili is 23.5 carbs. A cup of butternut squash soup, I clearly forgot to include the grams, but that one is about 23 grams as well. And a slice of pumpkin pie is 46 grams. So it's a very timely time to include that, just saying. So I'm going to feel guilt less on Thursday. So if you don't repair and replenish your protein and carb stores during the window, which is about 0 to 2 hours after a workout, the sweet spot is between 60 and 90 minutes for muscle protein synthesis. But if you miss it, you will be more tired the next day. It's not like if you have a meal at 2.5 hours later, 3, you've missed that window. Your muscles are ripe for muscle protein synthesis and replenishing up to about 2 hours. And after that, gone. You don't get it back. So you'll be more tired. You'll find the next workout is harder. You'll have dead legs. You'll be more likely to be sore if you have a tendency toward that anyway. So let me give you an idea of a sample day. So where does it stack up, right? So 3 meals. If I were just having 3 meals and not snacking at all, having a smoothie that includes half a banana and half a cup of berries. So I'm just focused on the carbs in here. That's about 34, 35 carbs. If I have a cup and a half of chili and I have an apple for dessert, just looking again, I'm focusing on the carbs here. That's about just a little over 60 grams. If I have a sweet potato and berries for dinner, that's about 38. The total there for my day then is 132, almost 133 carbohydrates. Now, that's not a lot, right? It's not as many as I need if I'm going to have a very active day. So, what were my needs? I needed about 182 just for bare minimum, right? So, that's not even cutting it. We've got a lot more room for carbohydrates than we realize. So, you want to be cautious. Now, if I were adding a training day, what would change? Say, if I was riding a bike, is before I went out on the bike, I might load it with maybe a bar or in my pouch, at about an hour or hour and a half. I either would have some calories that I'm drinking in my liquid, or I might have a bobo bar, gluten-free bar, in my backpack, right? For more carbohydrate. That would help bump it up. So if you're increasing your training levels, eating during activity will help you, like long bike rides or longer hikes. And that's not accounted for in the number that I gave you, but that would be one way to bump it up. So, what is your energy availability? And on the worksheet, I gave you how you can calculate that. So you're gonna need to know your fat-free mass, which means your muscle. You just need to know what's your muscle mass, muscle weight only. So I weigh, say I weigh 130 pounds. I know from my smart scale, which I happen to have the InBody. You can find my resource at flipping50.com/resources. You'll find my Amazon page and the link to it is there. But I know that my muscle mass is about 54 pounds right now. So what I'm going to do is take my dietary intake, the number of calories I eat per day, minus the number of calories I expend from exercise for the day. I'm going to divide that by my fat-free mass, my muscle mass. So let's do that with me again. Okay, so let's say, for example's sake, I ate 2,000 calories a day. Now that's pretty low, I think. And I expended 250 calories doing like a 30-minute HIIT session. And to get an estimate of that, you can take your weight, you'll plug it in, and you can just Google how many calories would I burn in 30 minutes of HIIT, and you'll put your weight in and come out with something close, all right? And then I take those numbers and I divide it by my kilograms of fat-free mass. So the way to get that is if I know I'm 54 pounds of muscle, you take that by 2.2 to get your kilograms. When I do that math, what I come out with is 14.7. That's my energy availability grams per kilogram of body weight. Here's what you need to know. Less than 30 is considered low energy availability. Most of us are in that low energy availability all the time. At least 1 out of every 2 women probably are there. So, Houston, we have a problem. In the example, I'm below. So if I were only eating 2,000 calories a day, I would be way below. Now, I want to take this into consideration. If you think 2,000 calories a day sounds like a lot, and you weigh more than 130 pounds, you want to look at what are you doing and where is your lean muscle mass. So you want to be sure that you're getting adequate energy availability, or this is where your roadblock to weight loss will be. So if you don't have a smart scale, one that is smart enough to tell you your lean muscle mass, I encourage you to find an InBody at say a Lifetime gym. They almost all have them. You can sometimes find them now in Walgreens or in better nutrition stores. Walgreens doesn't have them the way they used to. I used to let everybody know that was a place to go, but I think they probably did away with the majority of them. Many of them got rid of them during COVID or pandemic because of less traffic. They weren't getting their money's worth out of them anyway. So, better nutrition stores and gyms or university programs are better places to seek. A DEXA scan may tell you your lean muscle mass weight. You may have to ask for it, however, otherwise, you'll just get your bone density. So, what are the ramifications of eating too little while you're exercising more intensely? Well, if you do that for a long period of time, your performance will suffer. And if your performance suffers, your results will suffer. The body will choose to break down muscle for energy, and it won't choose to break down fat because that's far more difficult for it to do. Women who are already good at using fat or free fatty acids, that's you and me, every woman. We already naturally use more fat for fuel during exercise compared to men. We don't need to do more endurance exercise. And we also don't want to be in a huge calorie deficit. A small, appropriate one is okay, but huge will backfire on you. It's especially true if you want to sway the loving exercise and overdoing it side of the continuum. So if you, like me, love to do more, you'd love to, go for long hikes and go for long rides and do longer workouts, and you love to work out really frequently, you've got to watch it. Otherwise, you will start to be stagnant and you will slip back worse than somebody who's just a moderate exerciser. When this happens in younger women, we refer to it as the female athlete triad. You may have heard of that, and especially if you've got young or athletic doctors. But in the female athlete triad, it's the athletics, it's the exercise, but then it's nutrition and dietary approaches, usually restriction, trying to lose weight for a certain look or to increase performance, or the pressure if you're running track or you're a swimmer or a diver or a gymnast, where there's scantily clad athletes, right? And the image that you're portraying is like a specific icon. There's more pressure. And then the third piece of the triad is menstrual cycle disruptions. But it's still true as of exercise enthusiasts as much as it is athletes. And what happens in midlife, we may not have the telltale sign of the period disruption. We just attribute it to menopause. And if you're in postmenopause, you can still be falling into this trap, but you don't know it because you don't have the disrupted cycle because it's not regular or hasn't been regular for a long time. But what you're doing is essentially the same. You're wreaking havoc on your hormones, and causing that endocrine or hormone disruption will mean that it spills over to being problematic with your cortisol and your insulin levels, which are going to feed fat, store fat, and not allow you to increase or hold on to even your muscle mass. The bottom line is eating too little can cause a weight loss resistance and a cascade of other issues, including thyroid dysfunction and inability to gain lean muscle or possibly even to maintain what you do have. So that was a bomb I just dropped on you, and I would love to have your comments or your questions. And again, you can go to the show notes at flipping50.com/eating too little. And that'll be where the show notes is. If you didn't catch it, that handout, again, if you want to go and grab it, is at flipping50.com/eat enough. No space between those two words. And that link, by the way, will be in the show notes as well. You can find it always flipping50.com. You can just go to the podcast tab and should be able to scroll right to what you want. So don't forget, this week, Black Friday week, the Flipping 50 membership is open. It's the 1 week of the year when you don't want to miss it if you've been waiting and you want to be a good friend and share it with your girlfriends and your sisters. You can also find out more about Stronger, Tone and Define, which is our 12-week strength training course. That starts again at the beginning of the year, but it may feel like a good match for you now that we're talking all about muscle. And if you want to kick off your new year with me, the January 2021 virtual retreat details are there as well. Okay, girlfriend, what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.